I walked into a church to steal their most sacred object and prove Islam was superior. Then my heart stopped for 4 minutes and I met Jesus face to face. What would you sacrifice if you discovered everything you believed about God was wrong? My name is Tariq and I am 29 years old. On October 15, 2019, I walked into a big church in Birmingham, England with my cousin Khalid and my friend Rashid. We had a plan to steal something very special during their Sunday service. We thought we were fighting for Islam. We thought we were doing the right thing. I had no idea that in 2 days I would be dead in a hospital bed. My heart would stop beating for 4 whole minutes, and I would meet Jesus Christ himself. Everything I knew about God was about to be destroyed. I was born in Bradford, which is a city in England. My family came from Pakistan and they took Islam very, very seriously. My father Imran owned 3 restaurants that sold halal food. Everyone in our community knew him. He helped pay for our mosque to get bigger. My mother Aisha covered her whole face with cloth even when we were at home and guests came over. From the time I was a little boy, Islam was not just what we believed, it was who we were. It was everything. Growing up in Bradford meant I lived around other Muslims all the time. My whole neighborhood was Pakistani and Bangladeshi families. We had our own schools, we had our own shops, we had our own world. English culture felt far away, like it did not touch us. I went to an Islamic school from age 5 to age 16. We spent half the day learning the Quran and Islamic teachings. We spent the other half learning just enough English subjects so the government would be happy. I was the oldest son. In our culture, that meant I carried a heavy weight. My father told me every day that I was the example for my 3 younger sisters. If I was a good Muslim, they would be good Muslim women. If I failed in my religious duties, I would be responsible for their failures too. That pressure was always there. It shaped every choice I made from the time I was small. Have you ever lived your whole life trying to be what someone else wanted you to be? That was me from birth until I was 29. Every action, every choice, every thought. I always asked myself one question: what would a good Muslim do? By age 10, I had memorized 15 chapters of the Quran. My father would invite other families to our house for dinner. I would recite the verses perfectly in Arabic. The older men would praise me. They would tell other boys to be like me. While other kids at my Islamic school would sneak looks at their phones during prayer time, I never missed a single prayer. Not once, not ever. When I was 13, my father took me to Pakistan to visit family in Lahore. The poverty there shocked me, but what impressed me more was how serious everyone was about Islam. The call to prayer would sound from many mosques. Everything would stop. Shops would close. Traffic would stop. Everyone would pray. My father told me this was how the world should be. This was how England should be if Muslims worked hard enough to make it happen. That trip planted a seed in my mind. The seed grew over the years. Islam was not just a personal faith. It was a system that should control society. My father introduced me to men who talked with fire in their voices. They talked about making Sharia law the law of the land. They talked about fixing the moral problems of Western society. They talked about making Islam the top religion in the world again. Back in Bradford, I became very active in our mosque youth program. By age 16, I was leading prayer sessions for younger boys. I taught Quran classes on weekends. I felt important. I felt like I had a purpose. I was defending Islam. I was keeping it strong for the next group of young people. I was fighting against the bad influence of English culture that was all around us. When I finished school, I did not go to university like some of my friends. Instead, I went to work in my father's restaurants. I learned the business. I stayed close to the community, and my father was preparing me to take over the restaurants one day. But more than that, he was preparing me to be a community leader. He wanted me to defend Islamic values just like he did. I got engaged when I was 24. Her name was Zara. She was the daughter of another restaurant owner. Our families set up the match, but we were allowed to meet a few times before the wedding. There was always someone watching us to make sure we behaved properly. She was quiet. She was obedient. She wore her hijab the right way. She seemed like the perfect Muslim wife. She would help me run a proper Islamic home. We got married in 2014. The wedding was huge. Over 400 people came. It cost my father almost £30,000, but he said it was worth it. He wanted to show how strong and successful our community was. Zara moved into our family home. That is how we do things in our culture. We began our life together under my parents' roof. 1 year later, our daughter Amina was born. I felt like I had everything a Muslim man should want. But under the surface, something was changing. I was getting more and more angry about what I saw around us. English culture was invading our community. Young Muslims were dating English girls. They were drinking alcohol. They were skipping prayers. I saw this as a war, a spiritual war. I believed real Muslims needed to fight back. I started spending time with a group of young men at our mosque. They thought the same way I did. We called ourselves the defenders of the faith. We were not planning to hurt people, not in the ways the police worry about. But we were ready to make statements. We wanted to show English society that Islam would not be watered down. We would not compromise. Our group would walk the streets of Bradford on Friday nights. If we caught Muslim young people drinking or being with non-Muslim girls, we would confront them. We would visit mosques that we thought were too relaxed. We would argue with imams who we felt were not teaching real Islam. We gave out papers explaining why democracy does not work with Islam. We explained why Sharia law was better than English law. Look inside your own heart right now. Have you ever been so sure you were right that you could not see how you might be pushing people away from what you said you loved? That was me in 2019. I really believed I was serving Allah by being tough and confrontational. I thought being uncompromising was being faithful. My wife Zara became more and more quiet over the years. She would take care of Amina. She would manage our house. She almost never questioned anything I did. My father was proud of how I ran our family. He praised me for my strong Islamic leadership. My mother would tell her friends that I was the perfect example of what a Muslim man should be in a corrupt Western society. In early October 2019, our group was talking about how to make a bigger statement. Someone said we should do something that would get attention in the news, something that would show we were not afraid of Christian symbols. That is when my cousin Khalid said something that would change my life forever. There is a big Catholic church in Birmingham, Khalid said during one of our meetings. They keep their communion chalice on display. We should take it. Show them their symbols mean nothing. Show them Islam is the truth. The idea caused arguments right away. Some guys in our group thought it was too risky. They worried the police would come after us. But others, including me, saw it as perfect. We would steal one of Christianity's most holy objects. This would prove their religion had no power to stop us. Allah would protect us. I said yes right away. Khalid and Rashid, another member of our group, said yes too. We spent 2 weeks planning everything. We learned that St. Michael's Cathedral had Sunday Mass at 10 in the morning. The communion chalice was in a side chapel behind glass. The security was weak, just cameras and a few old men working as ushers. Our plan was to go in during Mass when everyone was distracted. Thus, break the glass, take the chalice, leave before anyone could stop us. The night before we were going to do it, I prayed for hours. I asked Allah to bless what we were about to do. I did my ritual washing. I said verses from the Quran about defeating the enemies of Islam. I kissed my sleeping daughter on her forehead. I whispered to her that Daddy was going to strike a blow for her future, for a proper Islamic society. On the morning of October 15, 2019, I woke up at 4:30 in the morning for my dawn prayer. I felt strong, I felt righteous. Zara made breakfast while I put on dark clothes that would help us blend in. When she asked where I was going, I just told her I had important work for the mosque. She did not ask more questions. She had learned years ago not to challenge what I did. Khalid and Rashid met me at 9 in the morning in a parking lot 2 blocks from the cathedral. We went over the plan one more time. I would be the one to break the glass and take the chalice. Khalid would watch for security or anyone coming toward us. Rashid would keep the car running outside with the engine on, ready for us to escape fast. As we walked toward St. Michael's Cathedral, I felt no doubt at all, no fear, no guilt, nothing. In my mind, I was a soldier for Allah. I was about to take a prize from the enemy. I had spent 29 years being the perfect Muslim. This felt like the moment that would prove my faith was real and strong. We got there just as the church bells rang 10 times. The sound called Christians to their Sunday service. The huge stone cathedral stood in front of us. It had tall, pointed arches and colored glass windows. It was everything I had been taught to hate about Christianity. We watched as old women in their Sunday dresses and men in suits walked through the big wooden doors. "Are we really doing this?" Rashid asked. His voice shook a little. "Allah is with us," I said. I was completely sure. They worship a dead man on a cross. We worship the one true God. Their symbols have no power. We walked inside the cathedral. Right away, I noticed how quiet and peaceful it felt. The ceilings were very high. The lighting was soft. The smell of incense hung in the air. It was nothing like our mosque, but it had a feeling of respect I did not expect. I pushed those thoughts away. I reminded myself this was enemy territory. The mass had already started. A priest in fancy robes was speaking at the front. About 200 people sat in the wooden benches. Their eyes were on him. We moved quietly along the side. We tried to look like curious visitors. No one paid much attention to us. We were just 3 young men in a public place. The side chapel was exactly where we thought it would be. Behind a glass case lit by soft spotlights sat a golden chalice with jewels on it. A small sign said it was from the 1500s. It had been used in communion services for over 400 years. To Christians, this was not just an object. It was a holy container that held what they believed was the blood of Christ. I pulled a small hammer from inside my jacket. My heart was beating fast, but not from fear, from excitement. I was about to hit Christianity. I was about to prove Islam was better. I was about to show my daughter and my community what real faith looked like. I lifted the hammer. I was ready to smash the glass and grab the chalice. But before I could hit it, something stopped me. It was not doubt, it was not fear. It was a feeling I had never ever felt in my whole life. It felt like a voice inside telling me I was about to make a terrible mistake. A mistake I could never fix. Have you ever stood at the edge of a choice that would change everything and felt deep down that you were about to cross a line you could never cross back? I pushed that strange feeling down and away. I had come too far to stop now. I swung the hammer hard against the glass case. The sound of breaking glass rang through the cathedral like a gun going off. Every person in every seat turned their head toward us. For one frozen second, there was total silence, just the sound of tiny pieces of glass falling and hitting the marble floor. Then everything went crazy. People started shouting. The priest stopped talking right in the middle of his sentence. An old man who worked at the church started walking toward us, but he was at least 70 years old and could not really stop us. I reached my hand through the broken glass. The sharp edges cut my skin, but I did not care. I grabbed the golden chalice. It was much heavier than I thought it would be. Solid gold that must have weighed several pounds. Go, go, Khalid yelled. He was already running toward the exit. We ran through the cathedral. Our footsteps made loud sounds bouncing off the stone walls. The chalice felt hot in my hands, so hot I almost dropped it. I thought it was just my blood pumping fast, making my body feel strange. Behind us, I could hear people yelling. Someone said to call the police. The priest was trying to get everyone to calm down. We burst through the big cathedral doors into the bright October morning. Rashid had the car waiting exactly like we planned. The engine was running. The back door was open. We threw ourselves inside. Rashid hit the gas pedal before the doors were even closed all the way. In 30 seconds, we were 3 blocks away. We were just 3 young men in a car on a Sunday morning. No one could tell what we had just done. We did it. Khalid was almost yelling. His face was red with excitement. Did you see their faces? Did you see how they could not do anything to stop us? I looked down at the chalice sitting in my lap. My hand was bleeding from the glass cuts, but I could barely feel the pain. The chalice seemed to glow in the morning sun coming through the car window. I should have felt happy. I should have felt proud and strong. Instead, I felt nothing, just an empty feeling I could not explain. You okay, Tariq? Rashid looked at me in the little mirror. You look pale. I am fine, I lied. Just my body calming down after all that. But I was not fine. That strange feeling from before I broke the glass was getting stronger, not weaker. It felt like a heavy weight pushing down on my chest. I could not breathe right. I tried to say verses from the Quran in my head to make myself calm, but the words would not come. My mind felt fuzzy and mixed up. We drove to Khalid's apartment in East Birmingham. It was small, just 2 bedrooms that he shared with 2 other men. The plan was to hide the chalice there for a few weeks. We would wait until the police stopped looking so hard. Then we would decide what to do with it. Maybe melt it down to get the gold. Maybe just break it to make our point. Inside the apartment, we put the chalice on Khalid's kitchen table. The 3 of us stood around it staring at what we stole. In the cathedral under the special lights, it had looked amazing and valuable. Here in this small kitchen with dirty dishes in the sink and old food containers on the counter, it looked different. I do not know how to say it. It looked almost sad, like something special that had been taken from the place where it belonged. This is worth thousands, maybe tens of thousands of pounds, Rashid said. He picked it up and looked at the jewels. We could sell it, use the money for the mosque. No, I said. My voice was firm. This is not about money. This is about making a statement. We need to film ourselves destroying it. Put it online. Show everyone that Christian symbols have no power. Khalid agreed. He pulled out his phone to make a video. But before he could start, I suddenly felt very dizzy. The room seemed to move and tilt. I grabbed the edge of the table to keep from falling. The weight on my chest had become so heavy, like someone was sitting right on my ribs. Tariq, brother, what is wrong? Khalid reached out to help me stand. I do not know. I cannot breathe right. My eyes started to get blurry. I could not see clearly. I could hear Khalid and Rashid talking, but their voices sounded far away and weird, like I was underwater. I tried to tell them to get help, but my mouth would not make the words. My legs stopped working. I fell down onto Khalid's kitchen floor. The chalice fell from the table. It landed right next to me with a loud metal sound. The last thing I remember before everything went black was the chalice lying just inches from my face. And a strange thought came into my mind. What have I done? When I woke up, I was in Queen Elizabeth Hospital, Birmingham. I was in the part of the hospital for very sick people. Machines were beeping all around me. Tubes were in my arms. Zara was sitting next to my bed. Her eyes were red from crying. My father stood behind her. His face looked worried and serious. "Thanks to Allah, you are awake," my father said. "The doctors said, they said your heart stopped, Tariq. They said you were dead for 4 minutes." I tried to understand what he was saying. Dead? That could not be right. I was 29 years old. I was healthy. I was strong. I stole the chalice. I fell down in Khalid's apartment. And then what? Everything after I fell was just blank, empty. A doctor came into the room. He was a middle-aged Indian man with kind eyes. "Mr. Tariq, I am Dr. Patel. You had a very serious problem with your heart. Your heart stopped beating completely. You had a massive blood clot. It went to your lungs and made your heart stop. Your friends brought you here. We had to bring you back to life. You were dead for 4 minutes and 23 seconds. But I am young. How can that happen?" Dr. Patel shook his head. "That is what confuses us. Young people sometimes get blood clots from injuries or if it runs in their family. But you have none of those things. We have done every test we can think of. Based on everything we can see, you should not have had a blood clot. But you did. And it almost killed you." After the doctor left, my father pulled his chair very close to my bed. "Khalid told me what happened," he said. His voice was low, so Zara could not hear well. "About the cathedral, about the chalice. He and Rashid brought you here. Then they took the chalice back to the cathedral. They left it at the door with a note saying, 'Sorry.' They were scared, Tariq. They thought Allah was punishing you, punishing all of you for what you did. I felt anger come up inside me. They gave it back. They are cowards. We were doing Allah's work." But even as I said those words, they felt empty and wrong, because something happened during those 4 minutes when I was dead, something I could not remember fully yet. But it was there at the edges of my mind, trying to push through and show itself to me. Over the next 3 days in the hospital, I started having very clear memories come back. Not memories of my regular life, but memories of what happened while I was dead. At first, I told myself they were just strange dreams caused by my brain not getting enough air. But the memories were too clear, too real, too full of details to be just dreams. I remembered leaving my body. I could see myself on Khalid's kitchen floor. The chalice was next to me. My friends were scared and calling for an ambulance. Then I was moving. Not walking, but traveling somehow. It felt like going through a tunnel. Not the white light that people talk about in near-death stories. This was different. It was a journey through darkness. It felt like it went on forever. And then I was somewhere else, somewhere that was not a physical place, but it was more real than any physical place I ever experienced in my life. I was standing in front of a throne. I know that sounds crazy, but that is what it was. A throne made of light and glory that I cannot even describe. And sitting on that throne was... I still have trouble finding words for this. It was a man, but not just a man. Power and authority came off of him like heat from a fire. Every king and ruler I ever heard about seemed like little children playing pretend compared to him. His face was kind, but his eyes went right through me. Gentle, but completely holy. And I knew right away, no question, no doubt, I was standing in front of Jesus Christ, not Isa the prophet, like Islam teaches, not just a good teacher or a moral example. This was God himself in human form. The same Jesus that Christians worship, the same Jesus whose cup I had just stolen, the same Jesus I had spent my whole entire life saying was just a created person who could not be God. He spoke to me, not with words I heard with my ears, but with communication that went straight into my understanding. Tariq, you took what was set apart as holy to me. You stole from my house, but I am giving you a choice. You can die now and face judgment for a lifetime of rejecting me, or you can go back to your body and live to know the truth. I tried to speak, to defend myself, to explain that I was a good Muslim, that I had served God faithfully my whole life, but standing there in His presence, all my good deeds felt like dirty rags. All my prayers, all my Quran memory, all my religious devotion, none of it mattered at all. I had spent 29 years worshipping a false idea of God. Now I stood before the real God, and I had nothing to give Him except my sins. Pure terror came over me, complete and total terror. I was seeing clearly for the first time in my life. What I saw was that I was separated from God. I deserved judgment. All my good works were worthless. They could not bridge the huge gap between my sin and His holiness. Then Jesus said something that broke me completely. I died for you, Tariq. I paid for these sins. I have been calling you your whole life, but you refused to hear me. This is your last chance. Will you finally listen? I wanted to say yes. I wanted to give up and surrender right there, but then I was being pulled backward, away from the throne, back through the darkness, back into my body. I woke up breathing hard in the ambulance. People in uniforms were working fast to help me live. And the vision ended. Ask yourself this question. Have you ever been totally sure about something your whole life only to have one moment show you that you were completely, totally wrong about everything? In that hospital bed, I could not tell anyone what I saw. My father would think I was going crazy. Zara would be shocked and scared. The doctors would say it was just a dream from lack of air, so I stayed quiet. I tried to make sense of the impossible truth that I had met Jesus Christ, and He was nothing like what Islam taught me. But I could not escape the memory. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that throne. Every time I tried to pray to Allah, I remember Jesus saying, I died for you, Tariq. Every time I thought about the chalice, I realized I had not stolen from a building, I had stolen from God Himself. The police came to talk to me on my 4th day in the hospital. They knew about the theft. The cameras had recorded everything. Khalid and Rashid had already answered their questions, but because the chalice was returned without damage, and because of my medical emergency, they were thinking about not charging me if I helped with their investigation. I told them everything, not about the vision. They did not need to know that. But I told them about our group, about why we did it, about our plans. I told them about the defenders of the faith, about how we saw ourselves as soldiers for Islam. I watched the detective's face as I explained what we believed. I saw pity in his eyes, not anger, not disgust, pity. Like he was looking at someone who had been fooled and misled. Mr. Tariq, the detective said gently, I have been investigating extreme groups for 15 years, and I can tell you that what you described is not defending faith. It is attacking other people's faith. There is a difference. His words hit me like someone punched me in the chest. Because he was right. I had spent years telling myself I was defending Islam. But really, I was just attacking everyone who did not believe exactly what I believed. And while I was doing that, I missed meeting the real God who had been trying to reach me all along. After the police left, I made a choice. I asked for the hospital chaplain to visit me. When he came, I expected another old man in robes. Instead, Father Michael was maybe 40 years old. He wore regular clothes. Just a small cross around his neck. He had kind eyes and a gentle smile. Father, I said. My voice was shaking. I need to tell you something. I was one of the men who stole the chalice from your cathedral, and while I was dead, I think I met Jesus. I expected shock, anger, maybe even fear. Instead, Father Michael pulled his chair close to my bed. He said, "Tell me everything." Have you ever needed to tell someone a truth so badly that you felt like you would explode if you kept it inside one more second? Father Michael listened without stopping me as I poured out the whole story. My perfect Muslim life, the theft, my collapse, and most important, the vision of Jesus that I had when I was dead for those 4 minutes. When I finished, there were tears running down my face. I had never cried as an adult man, not even when my daughter was born. But now I could not stop the tears. Tariq, Father Michael said softly, "What you just described is what we call a divine encounter. Jesus showed himself to you personally. The question now is, what are you going to do about it?" "I do not know," I said. "Everything I have been taught my whole life says that what I saw was impossible. Islam teaches that Jesus was just a prophet, that Christians changed his message and made it wrong, that he never died on a cross, and he certainly never came back from the dead. But Father, I saw him, I met him, and he was exactly who Christians say he is." Father Michael opened a small Bible he brought with him. Let me read you something from the book of Acts, chapter 9. It is about a man named Saul who hated Christians. He was going to the city of Damascus to arrest Christians when Jesus appeared to him in a bright, blinding light. Saul fell to the ground. He heard Jesus speak to him. That meeting completely changed his life. He became Paul, one of the greatest Christian teachers in all of history. As Father Michael read the words, I felt like I was reading about myself. Saul had been totally sure he was serving God by fighting Christians. I had been totally sure I was serving God by attacking Christianity. Both of us met the real Jesus, and we discovered we were fighting against the very God we said we wanted to serve. But Father, I said, if I become Christian, I lose everything. My family will say I am not their son anymore. My community will hate me. In Islam, leaving the faith is the worst sin you can do. It is called apostasy. Some Muslims believe people who leave Islam should be killed. I could be putting myself and my family in real danger. Father Michael nodded. His face was serious. I will not lie to you, Tariq. Following Jesus when you come from a Muslim background is very, very hard. You will face persecution. You may lose relationships you love. But let me ask you this. Is being comfortable now worth more than knowing the truth forever? You met Jesus Christ personally. You know he is real. Can you really go back to living like that meeting never happened? He was right. I knew it. But thinking about what it would cost to convert made me feel crushed. That night, after Father Michael left, I tried to pray to Allah like I had every day of my life. I did my washing ritual as well as I could with the tubes in my arms. I tried to say the familiar prayers in Arabic, but the words felt dead coming out of my mouth. It was like trying to talk to someone who was not there. All I could think about was Jesus on that throne saying, I died for you, Tariq. The difference was so clear. Islam gave me a faraway God who demanded perfect obedience. Maybe if I was good enough, I could get into paradise. Jesus gave me himself, his own death, as payment for sins I could never pay for on my own. Over the next week in the hospital, Father Michael came to see me every day. He brought me a Bible. He helped me start reading the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. As I read about Jesus' life, his teachings, his miracles, and finally his death and coming back to life, I kept thinking, this is the same person I met. This is the man I saw on the throne. The differences between what the Quran says about Jesus and what the Bible says could not both be true. The Quran says Jesus, which they call Isa, was a prophet who did not die on the cross. Someone else was put there instead of him at the last second. The Bible says Jesus was God in human form. He chose to die to pay for the sins of all people. Then he rose from the dead 3 days later. Both stories cannot be true at the same time. Ask yourself this question. When you find out that what you believed your whole life goes against what you know is true, how long do you keep lying to yourself? I was let out of the hospital on October 28th, almost 2 weeks after the theft. The doctors were still confused about my blood clot. Every test they did showed no reason why it should have happened. One heart doctor told me, Mr. Tariq, medically speaking, you should not have had this happen, and you definitely should not have lived through it. You are very lucky. I almost told him it was not luck, but I stayed quiet. When I got home, my father had set up a special prayer meeting at our mosque to thank Allah for saving my life. Over 100 men came. I was supposed to stand in front of them and tell everyone how Allah spared me as I stood at the front of the mosque looking at all these faces, men I had prayed next to for years, men who saw me as the perfect Muslim. I felt like a fake, like I was lying to everyone. I went through the motions, I said the words they wanted to hear, but inside I was screaming because I knew the truth. Allah had not saved me, Jesus saved me. And I was standing in this mosque lying to everyone, including myself. The war inside me became too much to handle. During the day, I would play the part of the perfect Muslim, praying 5 times, reading Quran, going to mosque, working at my father's restaurant. But at night, when everyone was asleep, I would pull out the Bible Father Michael gave me. I would read by a small light under my blankets, like a teenager hiding something he was not supposed to have. The Gospel of John chapter 14 verse 6 destroyed me. I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. Jesus was not saying he was one way to God. He was saying he was the only way. Either he was telling the truth, or he was a liar, or he was crazy. There was no middle ground. No option for Jesus was a good prophet. He was either who he said he was, God himself, or he was someone who deserved death for lying about God. And I had met him. I knew which one was true. Zara noticed something was wrong. She would watch me during prayers. She could see I was distracted and just going through the motions. One night, she said something to me. Tariq, what happened to you in that hospital? You are different. You seem far away. Like you are here, but not really here. I want so badly to tell her the truth, but I was terrified. Zara was a very religious Muslim. She had been raised in a family even more strict than mine. If I told her I was questioning Islam, she would tell my father right away. My whole life would blow up. I am just still getting better. I lied. The doctor said it might take months to feel normal again. She believed me, but I could see doubt in her eyes. She knew me too well to be completely fooled. I started meeting Father Michael in secret at a coffee shop far from my neighborhood, a place where no one from our Muslim community would see us. He was so patient with my questions, my doubts, my fears. He never pushed me or tried to make me hurry. He just kept pointing me back to Jesus, to his words, his actions, his claims about himself. Tariq, Father Michael said during one meeting, you are trying to hold on to 2 opposite truths at the same time. You know Jesus is God because you met him, but you are trying to make that fit with Islam teaching that he is just a prophet. It is impossible. At some point, you have to choose which truth you are going to build your life on. I knew he was right, but choosing Jesus felt like it would cost too much. I made a list one night of everything I would lose if I became Christian. My marriage to Zara, she would almost certainly divorce me. My relationship with my daughter Amina, Zara would keep her away from me. My father and mother, they would say I was not their son anymore. My 3 sisters, they would not be allowed to talk to me. my extended family, all my uncles and aunts and cousins. I would be an outcast. My job, my father would fire me from his restaurants, my home. I lived in my parents' house, my friends, all Muslims who would see me as a traitor. My community, I would be called an apostate. Maybe even my safety. Some Muslims might think I deserve to die. On the other side, what would I gain? Father Michael's answer was simple. You gain Jesus, you gain forgiveness, you gain eternal life, you gain truth. Is that enough? Look inside your own heart right now. What would you be willing to give up to have a relationship with the real God? The moment that changed everything came on November 24th, 2019. Exactly 40 days after I stole the chalice. I was working at my father's restaurant. During my lunch break, I went to a quiet corner. I pulled out my phone to read my Bible. I was reading Matthew chapter 10, verses 37 to 39. Jesus says, anyone who loves their father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. Anyone who loves their son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. Whoever does not take up their cross and follow me is not worthy of me. Whoever finds their life will lose it, and whoever loses their life for my sake will find it. Those words hit me like lightning from the sky. Jesus was not offering an easy path. He was demanding total commitment, even more than family. He was calling me to a cross, to death of my old life, my old identity, my old safety. But he was promising that if I lost my life for him, I would actually find real life. I closed the bathroom door at the restaurant. I fell to my knees on the cold tile floor, and I prayed to Jesus for the first time on purpose since my near-death experience. Jesus, I whispered, I do not know how to do this. I do not know how to leave everything I have ever known. But you saved me. You gave me another chance. I cannot keep pretending I do not know who you are. If you are really God, if you really died for me, then I want to follow you no matter what it costs. In that moment, the same peace I felt standing before the throne came over me like a wave. It was like every heavy thing I had been carrying fell off my shoulders. The weight of trying to be the perfect Muslim, the fear of judgment, the worry about earning God's approval, all of it lifted. For the first time in my life, I felt truly free. I knew what I had to do next. I had to tell my family. The thought made me terrified, but I could not keep living a lie. If Jesus was worth following, he was worth telling people about, no matter what happened after. That evening, I gathered my family in our living room. My father, my mother, Zara, my 3 teenage sisters. My hands were shaking as I got ready to say the words that would change everything. I have something to tell you, I began. My voice was barely more than a whisper. When I died in October, something happened. I met Jesus Christ. And I cannot deny what I saw. I cannot keep pretending. I believe Jesus is God. I believe he died for my sins and came back from the dead. I have become a Christian. The silence that came next was so loud it hurt. Then my mother started screaming. My father's face turned red with rage. My sisters started crying. Zara stood up and backed away from me. Like I had said, I had some disease she could catch. You are no longer my son, my father said. His voice shook with anger and disgust. You have betrayed Allah. You have betrayed this family. You have betrayed everything we stand for. Get out of my house now. Please let me explain. I tried. There is nothing to explain. My mother screamed, you are dead to us. You are worse than dead. Zara grabbed Amina. My daughter was confused and crying from all the yelling. You will never see your daughter again. Zara spit the words at me. I will make sure of it. You are an apostate. You are filth. My 3 sisters would not even look at me. My youngest sister, Aliyah. I had taught her to ride a bicycle. I helped her with her homework. She turned her back and walked out of the room. In 30 minutes, I had packed one bag with clothes and a few things that were mine. My father stood at the door with his arms crossed. He wanted to make sure I really left. As I walked past him, he spoke one last time. If you ever contact any member of this family again, I will call the police. You are a traitor to Islam and to your blood. We will mourn you as if you died. The door slammed behind me. I stood on the street outside the house I had lived in my whole life. I had nowhere to go, no one to turn to. Have you ever lost everything in one moment and wondered if you made the right choice? The turning point came on November 24th, 2019, exactly 40 days after I had stolen the chalice. I was working at my father's restaurant, and during my lunch break, I snuck away to a quiet corner to read my Bible on my phone. I was reading Matthew 10:37 to 39, where Jesus says, "Anyone who loves their father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. Anyone who loves their son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. Whoever does not take up their cross and follow me is not worthy of me. Whoever finds their life will lose it, and whoever loses their life for my sake will find it." Those words hit me like lightning. Jesus wasn't offering an easy path. He was demanding total allegiance, even above family. He was calling me to a cross, to death of my old life, my old identity, my old securities. But he was promising that in losing my life for his sake, I would actually find real life. I closed the restaurant bathroom door, fell to my knees on the cold tile floor, and prayed to Jesus for the first time consciously and deliberately since my near-death experience. "Jesus," I whispered, "I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to leave everything I've ever known. But you saved me. You gave me another chance. I can't keep pretending I don't know who you are. If you're really God, if you really died for me, then I want to follow you, no matter what it costs." In that moment, the same peace I had felt standing before the throne washed over me. It was like every burden I had been carrying, the weight of trying to be the perfect Muslim, the fear of judgment, the anxiety about earning God's approval, all of it lifted. For the first time in my life, I felt truly free. I knew what I had to do next. I had to tell my family. The thought terrified me, but I couldn't keep living a lie. If Jesus was worth following, he was worth confessing publicly, regardless of the consequences. That evening, I gathered my family in our living room, my father, mother, Zara, and my 3 teenage sisters. My hands were shaking as I prepared to speak the words that would change everything. I spent that first night in my car. It was parked in a big store parking lot. I tried to understand what had just happened. I knew my family would react badly, but I did not think they would cut me off completely and immediately. In 30 minutes, I went from having a wife and a child and parents and siblings and a community to having nothing at all. I tried calling Zara many times. I wanted to at least talk to Amina, to tell my 4-year-old daughter that Daddy still loved her even though he would not be coming home. She blocked my number. I tried calling my sisters, all blocked. I even tried calling my cousin Khalid. I thought he might understand since he saw me collapse. He answered only to tell me I was a disgrace. The defenders of the faith group had officially said I was not part of them anymore. At 2 in the morning, I was shivering in my car. The temperature was dropping close to freezing. I finally called Father Michael. He answered right away even though it was so late. "Tariq, what is wrong?" I told my family. I said. My voice was breaking. "They kicked me out. I have nowhere to go. Stay where you are. I am coming to get you." 20 minutes later, Father Michael pulled up in his old car. He helped me get my things. He drove me to the church building. It was a small house next to St. Michael's Cathedral, the very place I had robbed just 6 weeks before. We both knew how strange that was. He gave me a room with a single bed and a desk and a cross on the wall. "You can stay here as long as you need," he said. "Tomorrow we will figure out the practical things, job, money, legal stuff. Tonight just rest. You have been through a war." I could not sleep. I kept thinking about Amina, her little face, her laugh, the way she would run to me when I came home from work. I had given up my daughter to follow Jesus. The cost felt too big, too cruel. I found myself angry at God for making me pay such a high price. Around 4 in the morning, I could not keep my mind quiet. I got up and walked into the cathedral. It was dark and empty, just a few candles burning near the front. I made my way to the side chapel where I had stolen the chalice. The glass case had been fixed. The chalice was back in its place. It glowed softly in the candlelight. I fell to my knees in front of it. Finally, the tears came. Not quiet tears, but deep, shaking sobs. I cried for my daughter, for my family, for the life I had lost. I cried for all the years I wasted worshiping a false idea of God. I cried for the pain I caused by stealing this holy object, and then I felt it. That same presence I felt when I was dead, standing before the throne. Jesus was there with me in that chapel. I could not see him with my eyes, but I knew he was there as sure as if he were standing right next to me. A verse I read earlier that week came to my mind. Matthew chapter 19, verse 29. "And everyone who has left houses or brothers or sisters or father or mother or wife or children or fields for my sake will receive 100 times as much and will inherit eternal life." Jesus was not ignoring what I gave up. He saw every loss, every pain, every tear. And he was promising he would replace what I gave up with something far, far greater, even if I could not see it yet. Over the next few weeks, the persecution got worse in ways I did not expect. Word spread fast through Bradford's Pakistani Muslim community. Tariq, the Imam's son, the perfect Muslim, had become a Christian apostate. The reaction was quick and brutal. Someone put my photo and address on social media, my parents' address where I did not live anymore, with a message calling me a traitor to Islam. I got dozens of death threats by email and social media. People I thought were friends sent me messages saying I deserved to die for leaving Islam. The restaurants my father owned were damaged. Someone spray painted words on them, "Apostate's family." My father had to stand up in the mosque and say I was not his son anymore. He had to say his family had nothing to do with my choice. He did this to protect himself and my mother and sisters from being connected to my betrayal. I tried many times to get legal permission to see Amina, but Zara fought me every step. Her lawyer said I was a dangerous religious extremist. He said I could not be trusted around a Muslim child. I did not have a job. I did not have stable housing. The family court said no. I was not allowed any contact with my daughter. Ask yourself this question. How do you keep faith when everything you lost stays lost and nothing seems to get better? But in the middle of this persecution, something unexpected happened. The Christian community at St. Michael's Cathedral loved me and supported me in ways I never experienced in my Muslim community. These were people I thought were enemies just weeks before. People whose holy object I had stolen. People whose faith I had mocked. But they treated me like family. Mrs. Patterson was an old widow. She brought me home cooked meals 3 times a week. She would sit with me. She would listen as I talked about my grief and anger. She never judged. She always pointed me back to how faithful Jesus was. Tom was a construction worker. He was in his 50s. He helped me find work with his company. The pay was not great, but it was honest work. Tom's boss was also a Christian. He was willing to hire me, even though I had a criminal record. The cathedral theft charges were dropped, but it was still on my record. Rachel was a young woman who ran the church youth program. She helped me sign up for a basic theology class at a local Christian college. She believed I could have a future in ministry. She thought I could share my testimony to reach other Muslims. Father Michael became more than just my priest. He became like a father to me, the father I lost. He spent hours with me. He helped me work through the pain of losing my family. He taught me about Christian belief. He showed me what it looked like to follow Jesus in real everyday ways. On December 25th, 2019, it was my first Christmas ever. The cathedral community invited me to celebrate with them. They gave me gifts. They let me join their family gatherings. They made me feel like I belonged. I had never celebrated Christmas before. Muslims do not celebrate it. I was overwhelmed by the joy and giving of the season. That night, I sat in the candlelit cathedral during the Christmas Eve service. I listened to the story of Jesus' birth being read from the Gospel of Luke. Something changed in my heart. For the first time since leaving my family, I felt real peace and joy. I was starting to understand what Jesus meant about finding your life by losing it. In January 2020, I was baptized. Father Michael did the ceremony. Over 100 people from the cathedral came to watch my public declaration of faith. As I went under the water and came back up, I felt like I was physically dying to my old life and being raised to new life in Christ. The baptism was photographed. Somehow the pictures got onto social media. The reaction from Bradford's Muslim community was explosive. I got dozens of new death threats. Someone threw a brick through the window of my room at the church. There was a note attached. Apostate, you will pay. The police got involved. They gave me protection. They gave me advice about personal safety. Father Michael wanted me to move somewhere else, somewhere far from Bradford where I could have a fresh start. But something in me did not want to run away. I felt like God was calling me to stay, to be a witness, to show that following Jesus was worth every cost. In February 2020, I had a visitor I did not expect. My youngest sister, Aliyah. She was 16 years old. She showed up at the cathedral looking terrified. She had snuck away from home. She told our parents she was at a friend's house. Tariq, I needed to see you, she said. Tears ran down her face. I have been so angry at you for leaving us, but I cannot stop thinking about what you said, that you met Jesus. And I have been reading about Christianity secretly on my phone. I have so many questions. My heart felt like it would burst with hope. I spent 3 hours with Aliyah that afternoon. I answered her questions. I shared my testimony in detail. I showed her parts of the Bible. I did not pressure her. I did not try to convert her. I just told her the truth about what I experienced. I am not ready to convert, she finally said. I am too scared of what it would mean. But Tariq, I believe you. I believe you really did see Jesus. And I can see that you are different. You are more peaceful now than when you were Muslim, even though you have lost everything. She left before our parents would notice she was gone. But she promised to stay in touch secretly. Over the next few months, we met sometimes, always in secret, always briefly. I could see God working in her heart, drawing her to himself just like he drew me. By spring 2020, I had been a Christian for 6 months. The persecution had not stopped, but I had learned to bear it. The losses were still painful. Every day I thought about Amina. I prayed for her. I wondered if I would ever see her again. But I was learning that following Jesus did not mean my situation would get better. It meant I had Jesus himself walking through the situation with me. Then COVID-19 hit. Everything changed again. The lockdowns, the isolation, the fear, it affected everyone. But for me, it gave an unexpected gift. It gave me protection. Have you ever seen God use a huge worldwide crisis to do something personal and specific in your life? The COVID-19 pandemic lockdown in March 2020 forced everyone into isolation. But for me, it gave unexpected protection. The death threats stopped because no one could easily find me. The construction work dried up, but the church helped support me with money. Most important, the lockdown created space for me to go deeper with Jesus. I did not have the constant outside pressure and persecution. Father Michael set me up with online theology classes. I spent hours each day studying the Bible, church history, Christian beliefs, how to defend the faith with good reasons. For the first time since my conversion, I had real time to understand what I believed and why. The reasons and evidence for Christianity fascinated me. As someone who spent decades trying to defend Islam with arguments, I was amazed to find out that Christianity had far stronger historical and thinking foundations than I ever learned. The Muslim arguments I had been taught were mostly attacks against fake versions of Christianity. They did not match what Christians actually believed. During lockdown, I also started joining online support groups for Muslim background believers. These were former Muslims who had converted to Christianity. Hearing their stories, their struggles, their victories, it helped me know I was not alone. There were thousands of people around the world who walked the same painful path I was walking. One man's story really touched me. Nabil was from Pakistan, like my family. He had been a very devoted Muslim. He converted to Christianity. After years of researching the historical evidence, he lost his family. He faced death threats. He went through terrible persecution, but his story glowed with joy and certainty about Jesus. It inspired me to keep going. In May 2020, during one of our secret meetings, my sister Aliyah told me she had decided to follow Jesus. She could not be baptized yet. She could not make her faith public. She was still living at home depending on our parents, but she had given her life to Christ privately. She was studying the Bible on her phone every night. Tariq, seeing how you endured losing everything has shown me that Jesus must be real, she said. No one would give up what you gave up for a lie. I want what you have. That peace, that certainty, that joy, even when you are suffering. We prayed together. I cried with gratitude that God was using my suffering to bring my sister to himself. I told her to be patient, to wait for God's timing before going public, to be wise as a snake and innocent as a dove like Jesus taught. As lockdown went on through summer 2020, I felt God calling me to a specific job, reaching Muslims with the gospel, not through harsh attacks or trying to force Western culture on them, but through humble testimony about who Jesus really is. I knew the arguments Muslims had about Christianity. So I used to have those same arguments. I knew their holy texts, their way of thinking, their objections. But now I also knew the truth that could set them free. Father Michael helped me start a YouTube channel in August 2020. I called it From Mosque to Cathedral. I shared my full testimony. I answered common Muslim questions about Christianity. I explained why I left Islam. I gave evidence for Jesus' claims about himself. The channel started small, but in a few months I was getting thousands of views from Muslims around the world, many from Pakistan, Bangladesh, Egypt, Indonesia. The comments section became a battle. Some Muslims sent hateful messages. They called me a traitor. They threatened violence, but others sent private messages. They said they had similar doubts, similar questions, similar encounters with Jesus that they were afraid to admit. I got dozens of messages from Muslims who had secretly converted to Christianity, but they were living double lives, too terrified to tell their families. One message came from a young woman in Pakistan. I had a dream about Jesus 3 years ago, but I was too scared to look into it. Your story has given me courage. I have been reading the Bible in secret. I think Jesus is calling me. Can you help me? Messages like that kept me going through the ongoing persecution and loss. God was using my suffering to reach others. My giving up everything was not wasted. It was making fruit I never imagined. In December 2020, I got a phone call that changed everything again. It was from a lawyer representing Zara. She wanted to talk about my rights to visit Amina. My heart started racing fast. Was this a trap? Another way to hurt me? When I met with the lawyer, I learned the truth. Zara was struggling. Being a single mother was harder than she expected. Amina kept asking about me. She wanted to know where her daddy was. And Zara had been watching my YouTube videos. She would never admit it publicly. My client is willing to think about supervised visitation, the lawyer said. 2 hours per month, in a public place, with someone watching. She wants to be clear. This does not mean she approves of your conversion, but she believes Amina deserves to know her father. I said yes right away. I knew this was an answer to prayer. In January 2021, I saw my daughter for the first time in over a year. She was 5 years old now, bigger and more talkative. She ran to me and hugged me. I cried into her hair. I thanked God for this mercy I did not deserve. During our monthly visits, I could not directly teach Amina about Jesus. That was part of the agreement. But I could show her through my actions what it meant to love like Jesus loved. I could be patient, kind, gentle, present. I could show her I was still her father, and I would never stop loving her. Over time, the visits got longer, weekly, then without someone watching, then overnight stays. Zara never converted to Christianity, but she softened. She saw I was not the dangerous extremist she feared. I was just a man who met truth and was trying to follow it faithfully. In 2022, 3 years after my conversion, something miraculous happened. My father had a stroke. It was not too bad, but it scared him. Facing his own death made him think again about his choice to completely cut me off. Through Aliyah, who was now 18 and had secretly been baptized, he sent a message. He wanted to see me. I went to my parents' house for the first time since being kicked out. My father looked older, weaker. My mother would not talk to me, would not even look at me. But my father asked me to sit down. Tariq, he said slowly, I still believe you have betrayed Islam. I still believe you made a terrible mistake. But you are my son. And these 3 years have been hard. Your mother cries every night. Your sisters miss you. I miss you. I cannot accept your Christianity. But maybe we can have some relationship even with our differences. It was not full acceptance. My father still hoped I would eventually come to my senses and go back to Islam. But it was a start. We began having monthly dinners together, tense, awkward, but better than being completely cut off. By 2023, my YouTube channel had grown to over 100,000 subscribers. I got messages daily from Muslims thinking about Christianity, from former Muslims needing support, from Christians wanting to understand Islam better to reach Muslim friends. The ministry I started in my room at the church had become a worldwide outreach. Father Michael and the cathedral leaders offered to ordain me as a minister focused on Muslim evangelism. The ceremony happened in the same chapel where I had stolen the chalice 4 years before. As Father Michael placed his hands on my head, and prayed for God's work in my ministry, I remembered lying on Khalid's kitchen floor, clinically dead, standing before Jesus' throne. That moment seemed like the end of my life. In reality, it was the beginning of my real life. Today, in 2024, I am remarried to Emma. She is a Christian woman who understands my calling. She shares my passion for reaching Muslims. We have a son together, and I have regular time with Amina. She is 9 years old now. She asks thoughtful questions about why daddy believes different than mommy. I do not pressure her, but I pray she will one day meet Jesus herself. My sister Aliyah lives with us now. She came out publicly as a Christian on her 20th birthday. She was immediately disowned by our parents. It was painful for her, but she says the freedom of living openly in her faith is worth the cost. She is now studying theology. She plans to work in ministry with me. I speak at churches across the UK. I share my testimony. I train Christians how to share the gospel with Muslims in a sensitive way. I have written a book about my journey from Islam to Christianity. I continue making content for Muslims seeking truth. The persecution has not completely stopped. I still get occasional death threats. Muslim websites have written articles trying to say my testimony is not true. Family members still will not talk to me at gatherings. But I have learned that following Jesus does not mean the path gets easier. It means Jesus walks the path with you. Every year on October 15th, I go back to St. Michael's Cathedral. I spend time in prayer before the chalice I once stole. I thank Jesus for chasing me even when I was his enemy, for saving my life both physically and spiritually, for turning my greatest sin into the reason for my salvation. The Muslim man who walked into that cathedral planning to steal and destroy has been changed into a minister of the gospel. Only Jesus could do such a complete turnaround. Only his grace could take someone as lost and hostile as I was and turn them into a tool for his glory. I think about the question Jesus asked me when I stood before his throne. Will you finally listen? I am so grateful. I said yes. Every sacrifice has been worth it to know the real God, to experience his love that has no conditions, to have certainty about eternal life, to be part of his mission to reach people who are as lost as I once was. If you are reading this as a Muslim who has doubts about Islam, who has met Jesus in a dream or vision, who is curious about Christianity but afraid of the cost, I want you to know the cost is real, but Jesus is worth it. The losses are painful, but what you gain is infinitely greater. The persecution is harsh, but God's grace is enough. I am living proof that Jesus can save anyone, transform anyone, use anyone. If he can save a man who stole from his church and spent 29 years fighting against him, he can certainly save you. The same Jesus who appeared to me in that hospital, who gave me a second chance at life, who restored relationships I thought were broken forever, he is calling you right now. He has been calling you your whole life. The question is the same one he asked me. Will you finally listen?